Hello, everyone. I'm Deb Fitzgibbons. I am the coordinator of the Oregon Technology Access Program and regional and statewide services for students with orthopedic impairment. Both grants all about providing access, making our kids have uh, a place in inclusion and in every classroom because we know their voices are so important. So thank you for being here with us. Chandra Pinnick is the assistant and training specialist for both of the grants and the glue that puts everything together behind the scenes. I am thrilled to welcome you back. We have been talking, this is our third and uh, final in our webinar series with Mitch Weathers, who is sharing executive functions with us from his book, which I happen to have a copy of right here. Executive Functions for Every Classroom, Creating Safe and Predictable Learning Environments, bestseller. He is also the creator of the Organized Binder, a system for supporting executive function. Mitch, you've told us a little bit about yourself. You've been sharing. I'm going to turn the mic over to you and just take us where you will.
Okay. Thanks, everybody. Happy to be back here with you all. Sad that it is the final, but kind of nice to have three sessions and not try to jam everything into one long session. Which, if anybody wants more of this, in a few weekends, I'm doing something with the state of Nevada. So kind of both of our neighbors in some ways. Um, and it is long. It's 2, 3.5 hour sessions over a weekend. But I don't know why that just popped into my head. But Deb, I like how you structured this. So anyway, I'm happy to be back here. Yes, I've talked a little bit about myself, so I'll spare that. I have a lot to say typically, as you've probably come to know, and there usually it ends up being not as much time at the end that I would hope for Q&A. And so one of my goals today is to um, hopefully, and we'll see how I do, carve out a little more time at the end for questions, comments, thoughts from all three sessions. And some of the feedback has been shared with me, which has been really nice reading over. And I've also put up my contact information, which I'll do again at the end. And if we want to have a conversation that might be more in depth or take more time, we can find a time one-on-one to do so. Okay. So I'm going to do a quick recap. This idea, kind of where we've come from. I like to use this term studentness to when I'm talking about or defining this idea of or these skills, these executive functioning skills. And I like this word primarily because when I ask educators and people what they see or what they think of when with this a young person with this sense of studentness, there's some fun responses, but there's also some common responses like a sense of agency. I know how to do school. I feel confident. I like to use the word dexterity in my learning. I can kind of make plans and adjust as needed, which incorporates lots of other executive functioning skills besides the six that we've been talking about. And so far, what we've done, and just quick recap, the first session was really just kind of an overview. And it was really kind of the reason I wrote my book, book one, is as Deb mentioned, I created a program that you all know because we've gotten into it last time and we're going to finish that today, called Organized Binder. And what kind of tugged on my heartstrings was the number of teachers and parents that would write in and say, I want to do this. And we really kind of, because there's a materials component, don't necessarily sell like for a teacher to purchase those for her or their classroom. That would go through the school. And so I really wanted to unpack it all and say, okay, well, if you didn't have this program, um, how could you implement these strategies in your environment to help students start to develop these skills? So that was kind of session one, like an overview. That session two was the daily routine part of Organized Binder, which incorporates working memory, planning and time management, and organization. And the other three parts where we're going today which I'll get to in a bit, goal setting, accountability, and self-regulation. But as a review, in both sessions, I've talked to you about your like the idea of just keeping in mind your environment because all of our environments are different. Especially on a call like this where we're not all just saying, kind of that traditional classroom teacher role or environment. So as we start to think about this work, kind of on a larger scale, and I may have mentioned this last time, but I was recently speaking to a district in Arizona, and it was really interesting because the facilities department was there and the transportation department was there, as well as there was special ed and some gen ed counterpart. And um, it was really interesting the dialogue that came about. Like, how do we all think about improving the environment in ways that lead to better executive function? So I come back to that with you because this idea of studentness, it's really about environment and how do we shape the environment. And this is the way I explain it is I don't believe that these skills and habits are taught, that they're best learned when students clearly see them modeled and they get practice doing them as a byproduct of a predictable routine. And recognizing if you do have a copy of my book, you'll notice the subtitle is Creating Safe and Predictable Learning Environments. I really believe, and we spent some time on this already, the power of routine and what that can do. But just in terms of executive functioning, the sense of studentness shaping the environment because they're not taught. So, how do I model these and give students practice with them over time? Because these things are learned by doing. Okay. Not so much the traditional sense of the word teaching. So when Deb and I were planning this, she had asked that we do this three-part, the first part again, overview, and then the second two, kind of a deeper dive into organized binder. So we're going to pick up there. This is what we call the student bundle. Um, and one of the things I will mention, and it came to mind when I was reading through some of the questions and comments. And this was one of the, to be perfectly honest, one of the hesitations in writing the book. And then we also have an online course by the same name. And the in writing the book, and I mention it in both places, I really believe in this tactile, I want to see it, I have to model it, and I have to be doing it. So there is a materials component. So implementing some of these strategies outside of working with the organized binder materials, that's just um, something that schools and teachers, educators will have to consider and supply. So if it's possible to use this, to be honest, it usually just comes down to a budgetary conversation. Is there room in the budget or not? And if there is, it just lifts that load off of the school, the teacher, the whoever it might be that's rolling it out. So inside this organized binder, those 8 tabs, I went over this last time, so I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time today, but this idea of color coding in addition to the color, those letters in the upper right-hand corner that coincide with the tabs on the binder, all meant to be nonverbal visual cueing so that students are just spending less of their cognitive capacity trying to keep up with what's happening in the classroom community, or in other words, keep up with this daily routine. And this is just a super quick overview of what we did last time. We talked about kicking the lesson off by looking backwards, incorporating retrieval practice so that students are having multiple interactions with the things that they're learning. All of this is flexing their working memory. They're having to use retrieval to go back and interact with the things they're learning. And we're just going to start that way every day, recognizing that the more time students get to interact with things they're trying to learn, the more likely they are to move that information into the long-term memory. Second step is all about predictability. Like, here's what we're doing today. It's a log, so I know exactly what happened. If maybe I was absent, maybe I missed something, it's right here for me. But that this is designed in a way that I can actually work with students on kind of planning and time management and how I can start to incorporate that. Not every day. Most of the time, it's this kickoff talking about what we're doing today for that log. But this was designed intentionally to kind of look like a calendar or a planner so that we can start showing students what it might look like to plan things ahead and be ready for them as they're coming up. The third step is taking a moment every day to model organization, to stop and get organized. So if you just kind of follow this date column, we would have done a kickoff. I would introduce the lesson and we would dive into what we're going to either create or you're going to be given or taken out of a consumable. And I'll try to remember to come back to this at the end is that in that kind of tier two, if you will, a non-classroom based support of this program can be, this is a really good place to start, is saying, okay, you have all of this stuff or you've created it, or maybe it's even in your book bag, maybe who knows. Let's start and get yourself organized before we take any further steps, but we'll talk about that at the end. In terms of the daily impact, that's really it. Kickoff, update the agenda, let's get ourselves organized, and then the teacher can dive into their lesson. On occasion, we have this toolkit that I mentioned last time at the end of this session, which is really trying to help students understand, and teachers for that matter, that some things are these tools that we need to access and reference throughout a school year that aren't unit specific content that we're learning. Both, of course, equally important, but very different. And helping to make that distinction is another way to model and quote unquote teach organizational skills. All right. And then we end with a reflection at the end, where students, that whole kind of dialogue between teacher and student, those are collected, read, and really, really using it as a powerful and authentic formative assessment for the teacher. So what we didn't do yet, and I'm excited to introduce you to, are these three remaining aspects of both the book and the Organized Binder program that are used or kind of part of the program throughout the school year, but not necessarily referenced every single day. Okay, so I want to start with goal setting. These are the system files that we will talk about. That B, and then we'll talk about those passes at the end. But let's jump into goal setting because I think it's interesting in that certainly most young people that I've ever met or interacted with through my Organized Binder visits to schools and things just haven't set goals. Outside of students who have an IEP or maybe a 504 or some type of plan that has specific goals. But we know, I mean, the research there, the literature is clear about the impact of goal setting. Um, and when I have worked with schools that are incorporating goal setting, it can get quite convoluted for students. And I'll try to make that point to you here in a moment. But I love this quote that when you enter a new social role, such as entering college, but you could replace that with any transition, right? The expectations aren't always clear. Students need help not just setting vague goals, but figuring out a plan to reach them. And that plan part is really important. And that's what I hope I'm going to communicate with how we frame and structure Organized Binder goal setting. Because what I would say is a vague goal is kind of how most students, you think of starting the school year, a new semester, like, I want to be successful. I'm feeling positive. I'm engaged. And it's like, that's great, but what's it mean? And I can even tell you a story. When I first incorporated goal setting in my classroom, and this was right when Organized Binder was kind of coalescing into this program or system, I had students set a goal. I was all excited about it. I'm going to do goal setting this school year. And I even copied it on a gold colored piece of paper, which is stuck. That's still what with Organized Binder. And it was the first week of school, and we set our goals. And I let everyone just kind of choose, what's your goal? And get this, I asked them, these are freshmen, multi-language learners, plagued with academic struggle. And I said, what's your goal for the school year? That's 180 days from now. We're going to be done with this, or 180 days of school, more than total. And we did. They all wrote their goal down. I had them write in a complete sentence and I was all excited. And then we never checked it again because it wasn't part of like the fabric of what we were doing. And when we literally got into like spring, I was like, oh, that was just a huge waste of time. Like there's no way that's like guiding anybody in any meaningful way. So the plan part is what's important. So goal setting. If I had to ask, well, we'll do it. Put it in the chat. When I say goal setting, what's the acronym that comes to mind? Somebody put it in the chat or just come off mute. Just tell us. I know you're all thinking of it. Somebody has to be thinking of it. And Deb, I can't see the chat, so you have to tell me.
Um, Chandra is right on, so is Joy. I was going to type the same thing, but my finger slipped. But SMART goals
Smart goals, of
coming from our
course, smart goals. And since we're off mute, somebody come off mute. Just real quick off the top of your head, what do those 5 letters mean? What do they stand for? Don't pause, no delay. Come on, somebody.
specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, and time bound.
Okay. Deb, you're the only person that I've ever known that's been able to do that quickly when I ask. Because most of the time, and I'm not kidding, I've done this in like hundreds of people in the room, and we'll put up smart goals, and everyone's like, yay. By the way, spoiler alert, I'm here to take aim at smart goals. So they're good, but I'm just going to get there in just a moment. But most of the time, everyone will say smart, and I'll put smart goals up. I'll do this, right? But I won't say that what you just said, and I think there's a few variations on it. I'll just ask, okay, goal setting, smart goals, and then I'll ask everyone just real quick, somebody tell me, and it takes us like a minute or two, and it takes like a few people because some will know some will know others. I've never heard someone, Deb, just like nail it like that. So that's good. That's good. So you
All
have this
kinds of
though.
crazy information floating in his head.
And it's a incredible it works with goal setting. And let me just make my pitch here and see what you all think. Feel free to completely disagree with me, by the way. But when I look at this, and we could keep it with my ninth graders. I was recently at it's like a 5 through 8 middle school. And if a lot of kids, like I mentioned, a lot of people in general have never actually set goals, right? Like a real goal, like with an actionable plan, and then having it benchmarked out, all this, right? So if this is my first time doing it and I'm in 6th grade, um, and I pick some goal, and then do, am I supposed to know? Is it specific? I don't know if it's measurable. I mean, I've never done this before. Is it relevant? I think so. It has to do with my math class. Or do you see how this could kind of get confusing for a young person when you're considering, and that's the reason why the green line up there is goal setting. Okay. It's when we consider goal setting, I think the SMART acronym is quite confusing, right? What's time bound even mean when I'm in 6th grade? I don't know. Does that mean what does that mean? So here's what I think. This is my best family feud moment here. Goal setting, this SMART acronym is a really powerful goal review mechanism. So once I have my goal and I can sit down and think about, okay, it's in place, we're doing this, and have an adult or someone model these out for me, it works well as a reflection piece, I think more so than a goal setting template, if that makes any sense. Okay. And maybe you're already using it in that way. So I think once the goals are set, then we can really have a conversation, and it takes a conversation, which is interesting because in an organized binder setting, one of the things we recommend in the goal setting template I'm going to show you in a moment is that you make it as much as possible a social and like public conversation. I don't have to necessarily share my personal goal. I can if I want, but the more we can talk about it and reflect on it, the more it's going to be concrete. So the word I want you to keep in mind with goal setting is singular. Really, really, really clear. And I keep coming back to clarity, modeling, and routine. And we actually model this for students. And I'll show you what I mean here in a moment around the modeling piece. But let's just walk through what it might look like for a student in my ninth grade biology class. Okay. And I would actually start each year, and we still encourage teachers to do the same, is don't let students choose their goal the first time. Let's just, for the sake of modeling, just in case you've never done this, let's just say, and I would always tell my students, hey, I have a lot of goals for you this year. Here we are in the first week or two of school. But at a minimum, like at a base, I want you all to be successful. And the way we define that, generally speaking, is you would pass this class. So just so I can unpack this for you, let's go ahead and write that down as our first term goal. And I'll let you, if you want, change that second term. But I want us to do this. So everybody writes this down. And if you have a document camera, we're modeling it for students. And then the question is, well, how do you do that? And that's the public part. That's the conversation, because some students may have never thought about it. And I would always tell them, like, what do you do? And don't give me a laundry list. I want you to boil it down to one thing. Like if you had to pick one thing, what's the thing for you that helps you pass that class? And the reason this is a public conversation, because we might think this is like quite obvious if it's a school that gives homework. Well, if I can pass biology if I complete all my homework. Maybe a student has had that epiphany. I can pass biology if I keep myself organized, if I come to school, if I come to class on time. There's always things, and there could be much more elaborate than that. And what I would do, and what we encourage teachers, is we want to share those publicly, because there's going to be possibly students sitting there that may have not, the synapses haven't fired quite there yet, where they realize, oh, if I do all of my assignments, I'm more likely to pass. I've never thought about that. What you might think of as just common sense may not have occurred to somebody. So if you'd be willing to share what you do or what you think you should be doing, there's no wrong answers. Maybe the stuff you know you should be doing and you're not, so that people can share those ideas. And then we would literally encourage teachers to have students cover up their goal, or anybody who's going through this. We have families that are using Organized Binder at home in a homeschool setting, or even just supporting in school setting. They could be setting goals at home, but we cover up the goal completely. And I would tell students, like, just pretend like it doesn't even exist. You got this sub goal written. Let's just pretend I'm going to do all of my homework. Tell me how you're going to accomplish that. And it has to be like an action. And the reason this is called a daily task is it's just that. It's a task. It's something you do. So I'd always tell them when and where. Well, I'm just going to do all my homework. Okay, well, when and where? What's that look like for you? Because your life is different than mine and theirs. Like, do for me as a high school teacher, are you playing sports? Do you have a job? Do you take care of younger siblings? Like, what's it mean for you? If you say you're going to complete all of your homework every day, I want you to tell me when and where. And you might even be guessing. You don't know yet because you've never done this. And again, it can be anything. It doesn't just have to be around homework. The point being is that now I have something. We'll get to accountability next. But if we can identify a daily task and you say, well, I'm going to do it here when I get home, and that way it's going to all be done. And if I do that, then I'm more likely to pass this class. And so what's funny when you ask students in terms of goal setting framed like this is like, what's the most important thing? The goal, the sub goal, or the daily task? And kids are like, the goal. And I'm like, no, it's the daily task. The goal, I mean, I want us to have, of course, to have a really strong goal. That's important. And you'll get better at this the more you try it. But what's important is what we call character questions. Are your parents home when you get home from school? Maybe not. But what you're telling me is when you get home, you're going to get a snack and you're going to sit down and get through this real quick, or not real quick. So that's a character question. I had a student, Shireen, I'll never forget. I looped with her freshman and sophomore year, and unfortunately, she was incarcerated the later part of her freshman year. And she came back sophomore year really ready to turn things around. And I'll never forget her first term goal was, and I think I had her first or second period because she was tardy like crazy, like every day tardy. And it turns out she wrote her goal. I'm going to pass the class because I made them do that. And her sub goal was, if I can get to class on time, then I'm more likely to pass. And so when and where, what's that mean? And well, I'm going to set my alarm for 7 a.m. and I'm going to get up when it's ringing. And in conversations with her, I learned that mom was out of the apartment by the time she had to be up. So it was really on her. And I just told her that's kind of on you. And there's these character questions in life that start to define and shape who you are. So are you going to get up or not? And it's perfectly clear. It's just a decision you have to make. And I think that clarity, and I've mentioned, I hope I mentioned the idea of incorporating or involving families or parents in this work around executive functioning because they love it. But now I can ask parents, hey, this is the daily task that was set. Can you just check in with your kid at home? And when they're coming into my class each day, I'm going to be checking in with them. And it's just in short chunks. Okay. So this is 6 to 8 weeks. And it's a plan. Go back to that quote, right? I don't need just a vague goal. The vague goal is that goal. I'm going to pass the class, right? For some students, that's like pie in the sky. Like, how do I get there? Well, now I have a very clear plan and it's something that's realistic I can do. And then we're going to pause in 6 to 8 weeks and we're going to ask the question, did I accomplish my goal or not? Either one's fine. It's not going to hurt your grade. It's not yes or no. Okay. Most importantly, why? What happened? Let's talk about that. Okay. Let's try to get some clarity around that and unpack it. And now we're going to set term two goal. So we're kind of constantly coming back to it. But if I look now at this, remember the word singular, one goal, one sub goal, one daily task. Because this is the other thing I stumbled upon is I would have kids write like 5 sub goals. I'm going to do all my homework. I'm going to study my notes. I'm going to keep myself organized. I'm going to pay attention in class. And all of a sudden, it's like, well, what are you doing? Because there's too many options. Just keep it singular. Maybe you can work on one of those second semester or second time we set goals, second quarter usually. So now, though, I can look at that SMART acronym. Is it timely? Is it measurable? I think so. I think we can see if this is actually. So that's what I meant by getting it really clear and written down so I can see it. It's the first page in the pro. I mean, every day you see it and it's gold colored. I want it to be part of what we're doing. And if you remember back, if you were on the call last time, our last session, I introduced that third step that I just talked about with the table of contents. And if you weren't there, at the end of each kind of unit of curriculum or the chapters, however a teacher structures that, we take this table of contents that has all of the students' work and we staple it together to create a unit chunk. And it kind of creates this hard stop, new beginning every 3 to 4 weeks throughout a school year, depending on the cadence of a teacher's unit. That's also another time when we can pause. It's a great stopping point. Totally arbitrary. It's not like with the quarters or the semesters or trimesters of a school year, but say, hey, can we just finish this week, this unit that took 3 weeks? You set these goals. This is, are you seeing any influence, any impact, any evidence of your goal on how you're doing in the class? And is there any adjustments? So point being is constantly trying to make it kind of part of the fabric of the classroom so that students can be more successful. And I love this quote. I mentioned Paul Tough, certainly did last time and earlier, same book, the idea of shaping the environment. Looking at goal setting from that book, it's a little bit wordy, but mental contrasting with implementation intentions. So I'm going to do something with it, or MCII. It means concentrating on a positive outcome. That's my goal. And we'll just keep it simple here, pass the class. And simultaneously concentrating on the obstacles in the way. And I would call that daily task. Not that the task is an obstacle, but this is the thing I got to do. But if I have it just written down in that very simple form, it allows for this. I can see them both at the same time. And it creates a strong association between future and reality. This signals the need to overcome the obstacle to accomplish that goal or attain the desired future. So that's when I joke about the SMART goal, that's kind of what I mean. I do think it's a powerful tool for reviewing goals. And one thing overlaying all of this, and I can share this document with you if you want. I've collaborated with Sarah Robeson, and she's um, special ed based in Virginia, and working with this is, of course, specific to executive functioning, but also organized binder, that because students are getting practice with these specific things, she and I were talking about how we could incorporate those into a student's IEP so that there's actually that daily task or action around uh, their goal setting in conjunction with organized binder and these executive functions. So shoot me a chat or let us know at the end if you want to check that out in detail. Okay, goal setting. Now I want to talk about accountability because I really have strong opinions about this. With organized binder, there's always a class sample. And so when we get back to how students are looking here in a moment, but I want to show you, I walked into a seventh grade math class. This is in Tucson, Arizona, I think sometime in the last month. And it was class was going on. I was just kind of doing walkthroughs with admin, and there was the class sample binder right next to the teacher's desk, available anytime for students to check if they need. If they missed class, they need to update it, or maybe their binder's getting a little disorganized. But when we talk about clearly modeling, that's what I'm talking about. Okay, there's no ambiguity there. And so when we look at this D tab in the binder, that blue D tab, there's this binder check. And what we do is we just set up usually about 4 times per half of a school year, totally up to the teacher. Some do it a lot more because they need to, depending on who they're working with, kids in the room, and others, maybe it's a little bit of they spread it out a little bit more. But the point here is a couple things. One, it's prearranged and put on that green agenda so everybody knows it's coming up. Second thing is you're committed to maintaining a class sample binder. So there's no ambiguity about what your binder needs to look like. But on occasion, and keep in mind, walk through this with me. If you remember from last session, we start together every day. We update our agenda so you know what we did and if there's homework, if there's any. We get organized every day. We dive into the lesson. We conclude with our reflections together as a community. We set our goals as a community. Everything in the program has a specific place where it lives, that behind the table of contents or the toolkit. Everything else is color coded and lettered. Our binders don't have pockets, so you can't stuff things in the pockets. So when we talk about, can you do this? Most of the time you can. And I mention, and I say most of the time because I really relied on this as from the gen ed side of the world of this conversation. Within 2 or 3 weeks, if a student just couldn't get and stay organized, that was a good thing for me. It was like a red flag. It was almost like, okay, hey, something's going on here. What adjustments might we need to make? Is there something that right? It just was very obvious that there needs to be more support or some adjustment, something we could do. Um, and that's back to being able to see it. Here's this portfolio, because even though all of those, like I tell teachers all the time, everything has a place where it lives, therefore it's more likely to find its way home. But these are images sent in from teachers that, and some people say this actually looks pretty good, which is kind of funny. This is a college professor, and that blue binder is this student's organizational system for all of their college classes, except for English Comp, which is the binder that's below it, right? And you're just less likely to be successful if you're trying to find this. And we also know some of well, I still say it in the positive, how I was going to say, if I'm disorganized, I can feel dysregulated, as opposed to if I know how to get and stay organized, it might be easier to demonstrate some self-regulated behaviors. And to be honest, just be successful in my classes. So what we're going to do, right? And this is what I like to say, I showed you this picture last time. I want to see this as opposed to this. I tell some really compelling stories in the book, but I'm going to run out of time. So here's what we do. We gamify it every about 4 weeks. Families can do this at home. Anyone could do this in any setting. If you clearly know how the student's supposed to be organized, so I'm going to keep it in the classroom context for you. I have my class sample. It's right here. Okay. So I'm going to, and we use it every day. It's very obvious. We're going to switch binders, and I'm going to have you check somebody's just to help them out. This isn't anything other than what it did is it reinforces organization for those students, right? They're seeing, oh, that's not it, that seeing things that need to be updated or corrected is a way to reinforce your own organizational skills. And you're not going, we know this clearly. Like if I see the mistake over and over and over in my own setup, I may not start to see it. So switching, they find anything that might need to be updated. Students update it before the teacher just quickly compares it to the class sample binder. Okay. And in doing so, it's going to mandate or guarantee is probably a better word that students have the opportunity to create that year-long or course-long portfolio or evidence binder of their learning and their effort. Just giving a student this binder, this organized binder, and hoping that because there's a table of contents and toolkit, they'll get organized and set goals, right? Of course, that's not going to do it. I'm going to clearly model it and give you practice, routine practice of it, because it's this routine we've established. Okay, so the reason this is the accountability piece, and I make this argument, I guess you'd call it, very strongly in the book that I do not believe we have any um, business even talking about accountability until we have that clarity, right? So if I can say, here's exactly what it looks like to get and stay organized, then I can hold you accountable for doing so. But if I can't say this is exactly what it looks like and you can do it, and I'm going to show you, then I don't have any business holding you accountable. It's the same thing with the daily routine. If I can create and establish and then commit to a consistent and predictable daily routine every day, I never stray from it. We start this way, we update our agenda, table of contents. That's the organized binder one. Well, if I can get that kind of clarity, and the point I make in the book is what I'm doing is I'm painting the gray areas in our lessons or in our classrooms black and white. Back to that statement with the goals, not just an ambiguous goal. We can't have ambiguity around this. And so if I can establish that daily routine, just like having the clarity with the binder, I can hold you accountable for engaging in that routine. And until I have that clarity, we can't talk about accountability, which is the reason I saved it for the end. There's one part here, Tabby, not really important for our conversation today, but that's for a teacher's syllabus. But I will note, we encourage teachers of all ages to have some form of syllabus and start talking about it, even in younger grades, because what we don't want is a student to maybe find themselves in a post high school experience where they are in let's say a college classroom where they get a syllabus and they're supposed to just be ready to go on week 15 and no one's going to talk to me about it because I'm in college now. Well, if I've never done the agenda and started learning how to map out my time, if no one's ever shown me that, and I don't really know what a syllabus is. I mean, we had them in school, but we never had to do that. Like all of a sudden, and I have, you know, evidence about this because we work with colleges that students are falling behind and being, even failing classes because they just don't have that planning and time management piece down, which is a big part of why that tabby is in the binder. And then the last tab is H, which is about self-regulation, but it's optional. Of course, certain settings, certain schools don't have passes or already have a system in place. Colleges don't have passes. So this is why it's at the end. But before I mention like how a bathroom pass could fall under self-regulated behavior, um, think about this whole program. It's giving students opportunities to practice that self-regulation, to practice inhibition. So, for example, if I have this really clear starting routine that I just mentioned, and I stick to it every day, it's just consistent, it's predictable. Well, now I have a choice to make every single day as a learner, right? And hopefully, it automaticity kind of just, and it usually is the case, where this is just kind of how we do school in here. And so it's not an issue, but it does present students that opportunity to engage or not, right? I can't force you to do anything. So it's presenting students with that opportunity, but in a no stakes, low kind of impact way where every day, okay, now that I'm engaged in this, can I practice inhibition and stay focused on that kickoff? Like all those little bits every single day throughout the school year um, is self-regulated behavior. So even the table of contents. Okay, this is assignment number 5. I can see and I'm hearing and I know that it goes right behind assignment number 4, right in front of number 6. But I really do believe it. Now I have, am I going to put it there or am I just going to stuff it in the book bag? Am I just going to throw it in my binder? Am I going to, right? So the more we can have that clarity and stick to it, then again, we can talk accountability, but it's also presenting students with opportunities um, for self-regulated behavior. All of that to be said, a fun way for me to also incorporate it and then be able to really kind of talk about it with students is we give them 3 passes every school defines how long that is. To be honest, it's usually 1 semester. They're not an emergency pass, they're not a nurse's pass. They're like currency because any of them that are unused at the end of the semester are worth 1 missing assignment on a table of contents. And of course, students are going to ask, is it, like on a unit exam? Can I, we're talking about it at, normal assignment, but it gives it a little bit of currency. And so now, when it's applicable, there's settings where it's not, but do I really need to go to the bathroom? Do I need to go to my locker? Do I need to do something that I want that kind of autonomy to it? Because if I don't, I can hold on to these and turn them in at the end of the semester, and it just allows for another opportunity almost in kind of a playful way. Of course, ed code's very clear. You can't and nor would you want to keep a kid in class, but it's a way to just kind of put it back on them. And it also, to be honest, I stumbled upon this. It became a really nice way to see how often a student's leaving class if they don't have a stated reason for doing so. So for today, looking at goal setting, accountability, and self-regulation, I hope you can see that self-regulation's really all of this, but also this piece too. The guide for families. I do want to mention this because they love it. Every one of these student bundles comes with a bilingual guide that goes home. You'll see that it's not 3-hole punched. Everything else is. It reads Spanish and English. It's a flip book, depending on which way it reads. And it invites families into the process of supporting this work around executive functionings at home. It's completely content agnostic, can be used because you can see right here, it's showing them the daily routine. And then each section, and I apologize if this is a little too small to see, I'm more than willing to send you a digital copy if you want to thumb through this. But you can see it's going to explain, okay, what's this weekly lifeline? What's the agenda? Um, but most importantly, skills practice, but then it's how you can support. And this is where I've found families, one, they love the clarity around, hey, do you want to see your students' reflections every day? You can look right here. Do you want to see what we did? You can look on this green agenda. Do you want to see their work at any given time in this unit? Check this table of contents. Do you want to see their past work? Like, and I now know as having a freshman in high school, it can be really frustrating just trying to help her with her homework because I don't have that clarity, right? And find me a parent that doesn't want their kid working on those 6 skills, right? So it's just a way that, and I can give you the backstory, and then I'm going to wrap so we have the time I talked about. I mentioned that most of my um, students early on in my career were multi-language learners. And for a variety of very valid reasons, it could be more of a challenge to engage those families, either in kind of the larger school community or even in things that would be happening at my class. So like, for example, open house and back to school night. As a high school teacher, 150, 160 kids, I might see 1 or 2 families on a night. But I knew, and of course, that doesn't mean most of those families are here in this country in large part for their kids and in the school. And so it's by no means didn't mean they didn't want to be engaged. And so when this went home and they could access it, the feedback was so overwhelming and positive. So I just think it's a very unique way to engage families in a way that's not tied to content. And if I was teaching a kind of upper level science class, I may not be able to rely on that content support from home, and that's okay. That peer check is in the family guide so that those can happen at home, which they do. And then, real quick, data, because I just, for people who are minded this way, I want to show you a few things. I think you all probably know this very well. But when we look at that ninth grade transition, this is also true of other transitions, there's a decline. Okay, ninth grade. And you can see that bluish kind of bar and then the gray bar. You see eighth grade is the blue bar, ninth grade is the gray bar, right? And so this ninth grade transition, and that is alluded to in that goal comment where he said, when I transition to a new environment like college or like ninth grade, high school, there can be this dip, right? And what we've seen, and I'm showing you some specific data points, we don't have access to anything that's not either shared with us by a school or that's public data. So these were shared by individual teachers. But the reason I'm sharing this is I find it really compelling because they're the same kids. The data I'm going to show you right now, it's the same school year. And this happens to be a teacher in Grand Rapids, Michigan, who was using organized binder at one school and was familiar and actually quite amazing at the implementation. And she was transferred mid-year to a different high school in the same district that we weren't partnering with. They weren't using the program. And she just, as a baseline, kind of took a snapshot. Okay, where are all my students? And then was able to roll out this work, clarity modeling routine around executive functions, and then took a snapshot before and after of just the number of students passing. And this is Spanish. This is a content area, and you see subject area gains, and we're not talking about content. It's content agnostic. This is from Oakland High School here in California, ninth grade team. This is year after year, one year after the other. But you can see the gains made. Look at the left-hand bar is probably most important. In the subgroups, um, and in Gen Ed there, you see subject area gains on these tests or score gains on the tests. Between the blue and the red, the red year is when they rolled out organized binder. So we came back, crunched this data, and came back and showed it to them in year two and said, "Hey, check this out. You guys made progress in every category. Well, you tell us what you think that's about." And they were pretty honest and open, like, "Hey, this is the only like initiative we rolled out. We tried to keep it pretty singular for that reason." And we see it. Another teacher, brand new, same year. I love this one because she contacted like about a third of the way through the year, that blue marking period. So they're clearly on trimesters and was just a new teacher and didn't know what was happening. She's like, "My students are disorganized. It's chaotic. I need to do something." She rolled out organized binder, took a snapshot, and you can see that just students, this is showing learning to get and stay organized. And then the number of this happened to just be A's, but we could look at other passing grades just by starting to develop these skills by virtue of the program. So thought that's kind of interesting. I've ended with Dweck every time. I will again, because I always do, that if we're going to raise standards in our schools without giving students the means of reaching them, it's a recipe for disaster. It just pushes the poorly prepared or poorly motivated students into failure and out of school. And I really do believe this means of reaching them are these executive functions. That is me for the third time. That's what I have planned for us today. We have 9 minutes, which is a little better than the other sessions. Deb, I'll turn it back over to you. I was thinking we'd chat takeaways, Q&A.
That sounds great, Mitch. Thank
All
you.
right.
We didn't have a
Mhm.
whole lot of questions, a lot of comments about what you were saying, so it resonates on different levels. I have to
Okay.
laugh. Sometimes you say things, and it's probably like most of us here. It makes us think of an individual student. And when you're talking about disorganized book bags, I remember a student in particular who always had this thing with food. And so I found in her book bag one time a sheet cake I found turkey legs. I found all kinds of things. So what's the weirdest thing you found in a book bag? But homework has no chance to survive when somebody's dumped a sheet cake in there. Just made me laugh, that's all. So just thinking about your own environment and how how important executive functioning is. We know this. This is foundational. We know this. What questions, comments, suggestions, scenarios would you like to present to this group and have Mitch and others chime in on implementation? You can type it in the chat. Feel free to unmute yourself. I, for one, am looking forward to hearing what Joy Glidewell does with the organized binders. Joy is a superstar over in Pendleton. She's starting with a very small group, a pilot group that hopefully will grow. And when you shout out successes, Joy, I think that that's exactly what happens when you share the kind of data that Mitch shared. What questions or comments do you have, folks? What resonates with you? What are your takeaways? Planning another session, a presentation with someone doing the 3-2-1. What are 3 takeaways? 2 things you want to know more about, and 1 call to action. What do you plan to do with information? I plan to put a link to all of the recordings and handouts. Because I'm getting ready to retire, I'm just going to put it in an email and shoot it out to everybody and hope there's a percentage of people that will watch it. And hopefully some of those are Gen Ed, and hopefully there are people who want to do something with it. But I just think I'm going to shoot it out to everybody and their animals. Importance of accountability. You want to unmute yourself and say more? Into adulthood. I love that you put that.
Yeah. Well, just the piece of helping students be responsible for themselves and giving them a vehicle in which to do that instead of just sort of preaching, demonstrating that through modeling and giving them tools that are really user friendly.
I love what you're saying, and making, so often we say, here's what you need to be doing. Now go over here and we'll turn you in this direction. And we're enabling the kids, telling them what they need to do. But through this process, the accountability shines through. Mitch, did you have something to add to that?
I think that it was funny. I was contacted last week. It was a teacher in Asia and at an international school. And it's interesting with like over-involved parents that are doing things for kids and they don't let them kind of struggle with some of it. And this teacher, they were getting complaints from home, and it's a IB school, but the early years. So like in the US context, like primary K1, 2, 3. And he, speaking of organization, Devin, the book bag, it was, they're little kids. They have their lunchbox, they have their materials, and it's the book bag goes to and from school. And it was not uncommon. His email to me, like finding homework that was all soiled or classwork that the water bottle dumped out on. And he realized, like, I need to clearly he had read my book. And so he brought in his book bag, a lunchbox. He brought in everything that kid would have in their book bag on his desk and are required to have. And then he showed them how to pack their lunchbox, repack it, and then how to pack the book bag to go home. And he did that every single day for several weeks. And over time, it's perfectly clear. I see everything I'm supposed to have. I'm modeling it for you. It takes just a minute or two. And then I routinely do it over several weeks. And all of a sudden, he's getting all this positive feedback from families of like, hey, and not even just their book bags, how they're seeing it influence like stuff around the house and like their room and like pretty interesting work. But the point being is then I can hold you accountable. So I appreciate that. Like you can't just hold accountable because it what I try to unpack in the book is like it can almost slide into like a like authoritarianism, like, you know, told you to do this. Why aren't you doing it? And it's like, no, it got to go about it differently. So
I worked with have over time worked with a number of students who I did the homework. I completed it. Oh, I had to turn it in too. That's
yeah.
how you, okay. So even asking them how they were doing in the class, and I alluded to this last time, they really couldn't tell you and I love what you have where there's a point, you're looking at how many points is it worth.
Mm,
And so then they have something measurable to take a look at. But a lot of, like I said, many kids didn't realize that I'm getting points because I turned it in. I
mm.
understand it. What, I have to take a test, I have to pass a test. I know I get it. But anyway, I saw that who else had a comment?
Well, and some of that at the, on the support level, and I think I mentioned this last time, but specifically around the organization piece, we work with schools where it is, and this is again students who are in that gen ed setting, but that have a support teacher. They're in special ed as well. And it always starts with, okay, let's just make sure it's all put back together. It's another layer of support and accountability. But then just as the frustration I have trying to support my daughter in math at home, because I'm like, I have no idea how they taught this. I don't know where your notes are. I don't, and then it always breaks down into like it just we end up arguing because she's like, that's not how I learned it. I'm like, what do you mean? Like this is how math works. And no, and it's if I could just have the stuff. And so same thing in that special ed support. Like here's everything from that class. So, but I'm doing all the talking. Let me be quiet.
Okay, the comment, and I'm not sure who RH is, great presentation. Seems like a
Thanks,
very effective
RH.
means of externalizing executive functions,
Yeah.
modeling it, making it explicit, helping kids to feel like they can be comfortable with the environment. You said the name of your book is Predictable Learning Environments that safe. That's another one.
Mhm.
I am safe to explore. I'm learning the executive functions. Um, it it just really brings it back around. Chanda?
I appreciate that more broadly in life. Um, I'll show you just real
Yes.
quick. This is a table from a study, well-known study around executive functions in 2011. But just look at the impact. And this is all rooted in research and evidence. This is not wishful thinking. Mental health, physical health, quality of life. I, of course, have this. The pink box is mine. This is just some work I'm doing. Job success, marital harmony, I mean, so when we talk about broader implications in life, it's really true. Oh yeah, sound right here, man.
So trying to help our kids. It's great that you have strategies for bringing parents in the loop. I think in all of the endeavors we're doing, we're finding out the importance of making sure that parents are part of the team.
Hmm.
Mitch, it's been lovely to have
Yeah.
you with us. The last
Thanks,
part,
everybody.
our third session. I would love to keep continuing the conversations. I know that you are planning another book. You're in the process
Mhm.
of that. Can you tell us who the audience for that book is going to be?
Yeah. So my book is written from my personal experience, both as a teacher and then supporting schools with Organized Binder, which is largely grades 3 through 12 and into higher ed. I my first book I keep it's there's a stack of them over here if you're wondering why I keep like staring off this way. Um, is published with Corwin and Corwin serves K-12. So they didn't want higher ed there, which I think is especially at the community college level, there's a place for this work. I digress. The outcry has been one of them has been, and I outcry in a good way, is well, what about K-12? What about K-12? Because if you ask any of those teachers, and they're the first ones to say this is the only thing we should be doing, but beyond basic literacy and mathematics, like this is the stuff we need to do. It's hilarious. Like we've done like kind of like this state level or county-wide or even district-wide stuff, and they'll see the workshop title and it's all the primary teachers sign up first. And then I don't really, like kindergarten kids not going to use an organized binder in that fashion, and I don't think they should. And so I deliberately was tried to be very clear about that because I didn't want anybody feeling duped with the book. Well, I had an epiphany about a month ago that we need to write a book, and I say we on purpose, that's K1, 2, 3. Because there's this interesting thing that starts happening in that third, fourth grade where there's oftentimes an unspoken expectation, a hidden curriculum around you're becoming a more independent learner that is there, that seems to be like this kind of this inflection point. And I have a dear colleague and friend who spent her whole career in first grade, has taught about as long as I have, and she just finished her PhD, still teaching, believe it or not, and has is really passionate about translating my work into the primary space. And so one day it just hit me. I was driving to pick up my kid from school, and I was like, I don't want to write another book, but we need to write this book, and it needs to same title, executive functions for every classroom, grades K-3. So both threes are overlapped, and I pitched the idea to my publisher, Corwin, and they were ecstatic. And so we're currently writing, and it's scheduled to come out at the very latest, we hope in March of next year. So, and it's been a really fun process already. Really interesting to try to co-write, and then primary, and how we're translating this work. It's really, really interesting. So thanks for asking.
Life begins at the end of your comfort zone. So
Yeah.
keep plowing
Yeah.
away, and
Thanks.
we all will be richer for it.